we are live. Welcome back. This is episode number 37 of Calibrated with Scott. I'm Scott, of course. Um, just some quick housekeeping before we get into this. My summer vacation's coming up here pretty soon, so I'm going to be putting out a little bit more content, a little bit more frequently. I've been doing like 2 to 3 videos a week. I will probably start doing 4 to 5 if I can. So that's coming up. We're gonna have some good guests on here in the near future. Everybody's very busy right now, so it's looking like late May, early June is gonna be pretty prime for some good guests. So I'm excited about that. And if you guys like my content, if you could go like and subscribe this video after you're done listening. I keep saying this in the beginning of the videos to go and like and subscribe, but listen to my content, see if you agree, see if you think that, it makes sense. If you disagree, see if it makes sense, and then go like. I would hate for, you know, me to be asking you guys to go like this before we even get into it, but that's besides the point. I appreciate y'all. If you subscribe, that's how I know you enjoy listening to me, and it makes me want to create more videos. We're up to 1,700 subscribers. I've been doing this for less than 2 weeks now on YouTube, or just over 2 weeks. So that's pretty good. I'm very happy with the progress, and I'm going to try to keep it up. We have a lot to talk about. We have some very exciting topics to talk about. A lot has happened since Saturday when I posted my last video. A lot has happened. So we've had another strike day. Nothing overly significant. A large accumulation of AFU was struck in Dnepropetrovsk. They were hit about 20 times with Garens and apparently KH-22s, which are very, very large missiles, and KH-101s, which are super advanced. I don't know if that was the case. That's what Ukrainian sources claim. But the Dnepropetrovsk got lit up the other night. So that happened, but nothing super important. Ukraine also lost a couple more ammunition depots around the front, different areas, which it's got to hurt. And they also lost 2 S-300 launchers to Lancet drones. So those are kind of the big losses that I've seen. And the big news, though, is that the Ukrainians decided to go into Belgorod. They walked up to the border and they crossed it. And that is just the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I have seen the Ukrainians, the AFU, and the Ukrainian government do individually very stupid things, individual actors. And I've seen the organization also do some stupid things, but this one takes the cake. It was very, very dumb in that it completely goes against Ukraine's narrative. It will completely, qualifies Russia's narrative. Their narrative seems very legitimate now, even more legitimate than after the previous lashings out that have happened into Russia that just make Ukraine look like the problem that Russia says it is. So you have what ended up happening was I don't know. Some people are saying it was a BTG sized unit. Some are saying it was about a company, not a company, but a platoon sized unit with armored vehicles, a couple tanks. They went into Belgorod and started causing trouble in some towns. They, carjacked some civilians, a whole bunch of different things. At the same time, they were shelling into Belgorod. They hit multiple buildings. They dropped some drone grenades from drones, like small drones, and they didn't really do any damage that I could see. They, just once again, all for show. This whole thing, I personally think, was a way to distract from the current situation in Bakhmut. The offensive on the flanks completely failed, and the Ukrainians were not able to turning around the situation in the city at all. Bakhmut has been totally liberated. It has been liberated for a couple days now. There is no Ukrainian presence in the city. The Ukrainians are now in Ivanivsky. We're getting a lot more videos that are geolocated to that area from Ukrainians and from Russian shelling and so on. So it appears that the fight is now moved in that direction. And the Ukrainians just failed to do what they needed to do in a timely manner. There was weather delays around Bakhmut, equipment delays, I'm sure, maybe ammunition delays. Who knows? There was a lot going on. There was manpower delays in their trained manpower getting back into country and being able to be prepped for this offensive in time. There was a lot of different variables that were all coming into play and affecting the outcome of this offensive. Because I do think that there was some plan to at least temporarily regain territory around Bakhmut and make that fight go on for a couple more months. I think that there was a reasonable effort that was being brought together to do that. And it failed. We have estimates around 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers died on the flanks during the offensive from about May 10th to, I think the last progress they made was on the 19th. It is currently the 22nd. So it's been about 3 days since we've seen any progress. They're still talking about fighting on the flanks, but the Ukrainians, the AFU, they sent in the Azov battalions. They sent in some of their most fanatic and highly motivated soldiers. Maybe not the best trained, they're not regular SOF guys, but they're definitely much more reliable and trustworthy than the normal AFU, and way, way, way more trustworthy than the territorial defense. These are the guys that usually prevent retreat because they're committed to the fight. So the Azov battalions got worked. They got worked in those trenches, and they're trying to take Klishchivka, which is on a high ground, and the Ukrainian losses are just super high. I've seen like BTR 4s getting knocked out, which is great, which is some of their better equipment. T-72s getting knocked out, and different tanks like that. So they are committed to this fight. It's not just a slow back off trying to attrit the Russians as much as possible. No, that changed in like January. That up until January, basically up until Soledar fell, the Russians were probably taking more casualties in this area, trying to gain a foothold. After Soledar fell, that whole script flipped. The Ukrainians were still taking casualties and high casualties, but it was probably almost a 1-to-1 situation up until maybe December, when the whole Soledar area started to collapse. Once lines start to collapse, casualties become a lot greater on the defender side. So they failed to do what they needed to do in a timely manner. They have suffered greatly. This is a PR nightmare. It's what they were trying to avoid the whole time by delaying this the whole time. They were just trying to keep this idea alive that Ukraine is winning when they're not. And it's cost them a lot to maintain this facade that they are winning. It's brutal. The no retreat orders. They fought for every inch of Bakhmut until they were forced out. You know how many AFU soldiers died just being pushed into that and just trying to hold that little square of the city? This can be extrapolated over the whole second, western half of the city. Once the Ukrainians had their flanks compromised, the city was not theirs anymore. Now they were trying to fight for the city. But Bakhmut really was holding at that point because they were pushing everything that they could in to hold that bridgehead, and they couldn't. And once they never left the bridgehead though. They opened up their flanks, but they still never withdrew. They fought for days in the Domino, in the Citadel, in the over at the old industrial area. They fought for days and days and days and just kept pushing guys in there, and it just never paid off for them. And then the fight never turned. They tried to switch the initiative, and it just didn't succeed. And so that's what this whole Belgorod operation is. They are trying to distract from this. The timing is immaculate. It is the 22nd of May. Bakhmut fell on the 20th, like officially. Prigozhin announced on the 20th, right? The Ukrainian MOD still has yet to confirm that Bakhmut has been captured by the Russians. They did the same thing with Solidar. They waited about 2 weeks before they finally had to say, yes, it has fallen, because they were starting to get geolocations from way deeper, and the Russians were posting pictures in the very edge of Solidar with relatively no fighting. They're going to do the same thing with Bakhmut. They're going to deny as long as they can, and when the time comes, they'll say, oh yeah, Bakhmut fell in one of their reports, but there's an offensive going on, so just whatever, just ignore that didn't happen. And that's what the whole Ukrainian information space is doing right now. They are I've had a pretty fun day on Twitter, I have to say. Just watching these guys just cope their absolute brains out. I mean, the hopium and copium that is being inhaled around this topic is just immense. They're talking about the Russians, they're talking about this super deep penetration. It was like into 2 villages over the border, a couple kilometers deep. It's not an overly protected area. I mean, this was a minor incursion with 100 to 200 guys at the most, a couple armored vehicles and some tanks. I mean, there's Ukrainians moving up and down this area of the front all day. You can stage this relatively discreetly and get in. Should it have been seen before they got to that point? Absolutely. But what are they going to accomplish with such a small force up against the rest of Russia? I mean, it makes no sense. So they go in and they have markings. So the Ukrainian government said that these guys are Russian separatists. They're fighting for a free Belgorod, which, save it. They're just doing the same narrative flip that, Russia was using in the Donbass. So it's just, save it is all I got to say. And that's that they're pushing that really hard, that these are Russian separatists fighting. These are not AFU. These are not Ukrainians, but they crossed over the Ukrainian border into Russia. They are operating AFU equipment, Western vehicles. They have Humvees, they have other armored vehicles from the West. It's just, it's the AFU. They have yellow tape on. They have crosses painted on their vehicles for demarcation. That it's the AFU. The Foreign Legion that's fighting, or the Georgian Legion that's fighting in Ukraine. They're mercenaries, but they're AFU by anybody else. That's the side that they're fighting for. They're not partisans. They're not separatists. They are people who are fighting for the AFU, right? So there are probably Russian separatists in the country that do exist, but these are not them. These are AFU guys. So they come in, they carjack a civilian, they just go in and take pictures and capture a building or something. And then the Russians bring in helicopters, KA-52s, KA-52 or KA-52s, Mi-28s, and Mi-8s, all sorts of aviation, Su-25s, and they just start hammering these guys. I hope we get to see some footage eventually. They came in pretty light. They abandoned some of their vehicles. We've gotten pictures. I'll post those up in this video, but we have pictures of some of the vehicles that they abandoned. This is still a developing story. Like I said, this is Ukraine time. It is currently 3 a.m. On the 23rd. It's the 22nd where I'm at. So I'll probably do another podcast tomorrow talking about this. But they went in, they abandoned some vehicles, injured some civilians, There was some shelling that was in coordination and some light drone strikes, but all just smoke and mirrors. It is accomplishing nothing. There's no military assets. There's no military objective with the force that they went in with. They can't accomplish anything. It's just a distraction. That's all it is. It's just a distraction. And I really hope all of you go and pay attention to what is more important. You know what's more important than the whole Belgorod situation that happened today? I mean, maybe not important in terms of escalation and in terms of what is going to be talked about, but what affects the battlefield more is that today, across the entire front, Ukraine lost S-300 systems, 2 launchers, right? That's a big deal. That is a resource that cannot be replaced. They lost elite fighters on the flanks of Bakhmut that cannot be replaced. You do not replace fanatics like that easily. They lost multiple ammunition storage. They've lost multiple accumulations of troops and manpower in Konstantinivka, in Kramatorsk, in Slavyansk, in Chasiv Yar, all over. They're losing guys every day. They're losing equipment every day. That affects the battlefield. Don't be a gullible idiot. There are a lot of them out there. I cannot have gullible idiots listening to my podcast. Please pay attention to the important stuff. Step back, take a breath, drop the emotion, and understand what is happening in this war. The Russians are retreating. The Russians are moving slowly. They're not going to do big arrows. You're not going to see large offensives, barring a major collapse. You're not going to see fast movement. You're going to see Russia out tough the West. It's what they're going to do. They're going to continue to do it until they win. It's a winning strategy. Mathematically, Russia can outproduce the United States and Europe. Russia's economy has survived, which was the West's greatest weapon against Russia. And Ukraine does not have the manpower or the economic ability to continue this war indefinitely, whereas Russia does. And Russia has stakes in this war that will maintain its vigor for a very, very long time. For Russia, this is a war against the West. This is not a war against Ukraine. This is setting up the next 100 years of Russian history. It's setting up the next 100 years of global history. I mean, we will be talking about these events for the rest of our lives, if you care about these events. Just pay attention. Pay attention to the important stuff. All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening. This has been episode number 37 of Kalibrated with Scott. If you wouldn't mind liking, subscribing, and commenting. I want to hear what you guys say. Follow me on my Telegram. Follow me on my Twitter. Stay safe, everybody, and have a good night.
Coping so hard.